conclusion section of that paper. And their key points are, changing from first to invent to first to file had virtually no positive effect on Canada as a whole. Virtually no positive effect. The change tended to be, what did happen was a redistribution of wealth. Tended to benefit large corporations and disadvantage small businesses and independent inventors. Then they point out, well, in Canada, this is kind of a break-even. But in the United States, because the United States has a much higher dependence than the Canadian economy on its startups and its small businesses, and because the United States businesses tend to sell more domestically or less internationally, these guys who looked at the data, this isn't speculation, this isn't what we think will happen, this is what did happen. They extrapolate that if you take the same change and you apply it to the American economy, it's going to hurt. Now, I'm an engineer. I'm trained as an engineer. In my world, once you have data, stop thinking. You can interpret the data, but you're not allowed to speculate anymore. At Hewlett-Packard, our watchword was measure. And, you know, there's the data. The next slide is, it's a paper of mine. And just to summarize it, I've done a whole lot of startups. What do startups do? How do these work? And there are two fact patterns that most startups go through. Most startups go through one of these two. A lot of startups go through both. One is the one we were talking about. Inventor, light bulb goes off, new idea. Idea's not worth anything until you can start a company. You got to find an investor. You go to a room like this. And in Boston, we have it every month at MIT. The inventors sit here, the investors sit over there. You make the pitch, you tell, and it's like a dating service. They find each other. You got to find a manufacturing partner. Can you make this for me and sell it for me? Because I'm just one guy. I need national distribution. Under today's system, and it isn't just the 1-year grace period, it's the 102A grace period, which is much longer. That works because the handshake of confidentiality is enough. Preserves patent rights. I know that I can talk to you, and even though I haven't filed a patent application yet, and even if he blabs all over the place, I've got all the time I need to get my patent application filed. So we can talk. The problem with the bill is, and I don't think we'll have time to go through it in detail, but I've talked this over with a number of the attorneys who think that this bill is the cat's pajamas and it all works, and they tell, well, you just do derivation. Well, I would point out that there's a missing a conforming amendment that should be there, and it's not. So you can't show derivation. Oh, you file a provisional application. Well, a cheap provisional application, fine. You can file a $110 provisional application under today's law, because under today's law, it has legal relevance, and an incomplete kind of back-of-the-envelope patent application that you can do for $110, that worked, but it doesn't work under the new bill. We go through fact pattern after fact pattern. These take about an hour, and every one of these that I've had with someone that started out as a big advocate for the bill, they say, you're right, this doesn't work for the fact pattern I just told you and the next one I'm going to tell you about. It doesn't work for startups. And the advocate will say, you know, we've been through dozens of fact patterns. We've talked this over to a blue in the face, and you know what? We just never thought about that. Wait a minute. What I just told you is these two things happen with, one of the two happens with essentially every startup. We didn't think about it. For every startup? That's insane. This is not a well thought out bill. This is not ready. It's not ready. It's a disaster. The second fact pattern is we've come up with an idea, or at least a problem. And I had a lovely slide that I was going to show you, but no PowerPoint. Sometimes it takes years of trial and error. Come up with an idea, work with it for, it doesn't work. Try another one, it doesn't work. Oh, but that thing we tried 2 years ago, all of a sudden I see how we're going to make it work. Go back to that one. I have one friend his company came up with 100 ideas that they documented. Trial and error. Try this one, discard that one. They finally ended up with a product, you've probably seen it in the movies. It's the computer-generated faces that are now are used in a lot of movies. They only ended up using 7 out of the 100 that they came up with, and it took them 5 years. Today's 102A grace period, it's the 102A grace period that matters. Let a company do that trial and error. There is nothing in the bill that even vaguely corresponds to 102A. All the advocates have told you, yeah, we're keeping a strong grace period. Well, it's a little strong grace period that kind of looks a little bit like today's 102B, but the 102A grace period is what matters, and it is completely gone. Not anything remotely like it, and it's what startups need. There's just to kind of throw a few broad principles. Today's patent law was designed by, over trial and error, over years. It tracks the way businesses do things. Great. I, as the patent lawyer at my company, I basically sit in the back seat and watch. The business people drive. When they do something, then I do what has to be done to make the business work. The problem here is that this bill is designed for the benefit of patent lawyers. It'll simplify my life in some ways. And for patent bureaucrats, it's great for the patent office. Well, we'll talk about that. It sucks for business. It means that I have to be in the front seat. I've got to drive. I will become the gatekeeper for business decisions. Patent lawyers make lousy business people, and we shouldn't be in that position. And the other big problem is today's law gives a whole lot of options to companies. IBM can do things its way, the big pharma companies can do things their way, startups can do things their way, small companies can do things their way. All those options are there. What the bill fundamentally does is it says, one size fits all. You have to do things the big company way. And the big company way doesn't work for small companies. How am I on time?
Maybe 1 minute.
Okay. And that's why it doesn't work, is that it's been designed fundamentally by conversations among big companies, and they just lost sight of the fact that small companies need certain attributes of a patent system. One slide that I started working on the plane and didn't get into is just a cost comparison, something you have not seen. The proponents haven't talked about what are the costs, what are the benefits with some real numbers. The benefits, I think there are some benefits, and I think they total roughly $200 million a year. And this magazine has an article of mine on page 27, which would discuss some of the benefits. They're $200 million a year, roughly. What are the costs? About $2 billion a year. I don't have them all in here. But the costs are roughly 10 times the benefits. And I can talk that through with you after if you want to see. And finally, I'd like to ask you a question. Look around you. How many of the basic science and fundamental inventions around you originated under patent systems like HR 1249? Most of the really groundbreaking inventions originate in the United States. Go to a European hotel room. It's all American inventions. Yes, the Italians designed them to make them pretty, but the fundamental inventions are American. The only broad area of technology that has a big base outside the United States is stem cells. Think about that. The only way a country can compete with us in any technological area is for us to outlaw it. It's because of our patent system. When two competitors, you've all seen after somebody wins wins the World Series or something, you ask the coach, so what are you going to do next year to harmonize with everybody else? Right? You've heard that question 100 times that after every big athletic competition, right? No, of course not. That's silly. We're winning. We should stick with what's winning. We should stick with our startups and our patent system that makes investments in startups possible.